So I'm sitting out here actually filming this video in my driveway, right? And so behind me is actually a waterfall. And the reason I'm actually filming it here is because it reminds me of what I want to talk to you about. Today I want to share something with you about, my life, your life, everybody's life, right? And in my books, I'm very thoughtful about how I translate my wins, my gains, or my successes into something that you can understand and learn from. And I do a great job with that. And I hope you can read them because you're going to love it and your life will change from it. But for today, I want to talk to you about one little principle that kind of carried its way through the whole Wired Differently Odyssey. It's this idea of having our own communication structure as wired differently people. And I think it comes from this idea of what I've been successful in business. I've always had this ability to communicate, whether it's through metaphors or through stories or acronyms, right? But there's always been this thing in all my businesses. Tom's Donuts now most recently, obviously Wired Differently, Payserve, You Matter Staffing. Anything that I've ever done, I've just been maybe comical, funny, endearing, aggressive, but anything that I've done in that scope of communication has had an understandable vernacular, has had its own way of being, right? It has its own type of way. And the way I've been able to accomplish that in my leadership model is through a glossary. Now, I know y'all probably know what a glossary is, but a glossary is something that you put together and it makes it clear for people to understand what you're actually talking about, right? So that's what a glossary was created for. So if you say, I'm gonna go freestyling, you know what that means. Well, until American Pickers came along, I never knew what freestyling was. Freestyling was a type of wrestling, right? Freestyle wrestling. But no, not anymore. Freestyling is if you go out picking with the pickers and you don't actually have a destination to go to, you freestyle. You just drive around aimlessly, looking around at junk or stuff or someone's product, and you're like, hey, that looks like it might be worth something, so you knock on the door and you're a freestyler, right? So there's a glossary term that I just gave you that's gonna change your world when it comes to picking if you're a picker. But on a more serious note, it's right, it's accurate. Do you have a glossary? Do you have a way of speaking to somebody else that helps you translate what you're saying to get to them, right? How do you get your way of thinking to be their way of thinking? Or more importantly, how do you get their way of thinking to be your way of thinking? You need a glossary. You need something, right, that translates the two worlds communication process. And so in Wired Differently, this movement or this odyssey that I'm creating, I'm on my third book, Your Will Be Done, Wired Differently, book 3. And through these books, I've created from day one a glossary, right? And so we know what leverage means. We know what inventory means. We know what land of quo means. We know what drift means. We know what fear testing is. We know what all these things mean because there's a glossary in the very beginning of the very first book I wrote that was clairvoyantly setting up this nomenclature. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a quick story. I went to a publicist early on with book 1, and I just explained to her the book. She said, I like you. We're going to put you on radio. And I'm like, okay, was there something that you wouldn't want me on TV for? Is it my nose? I know, you're looking at my nose right now, or the fact that I'm bald, or no, you look fine. I said, fine. Anyways, I said, well, what is it? She says, well, your message is too complicated. What do you mean complicated? Well, she said, you got all these terms like drift, land of quo, and do you want to be average, and don't compromise, and leverage. And a smart woman says to me, what is a fulcrum anyways? What is a fulcrum? What is a Wired Differently framework? And, I'm happy for her, but we just didn't work out because she didn't get me. It was the whole idea that I didn't want to encapsulate Wired Differently in a 30-second TV spot. I want it to be a journey. I want it to be an experience. I want it to be you resonating in your life about what you are and how you're going to do it through this Wired Differently attitudinal disorder, this way of changing your life and seeing it and thinking it. And not everybody's doing it, right? Everybody's doing it in one way or the other, but if you put a glossary together, then we could grow the movement together and we'll all be on the same page. So Wired Differently has a glossary. Wired Differently, the brand, has an amazing beginning glossary. And in Drift Again, we added to that glossary. And in Your Will Be Done, we'll add to that glossary. So the message here is what's your glossary? I know you're going to read my book, Wired Differently, and I know you're going to read my book, Drift Again, and you're going to read my book, Your Will Be Done. And that has a glossary to take you through each book, each step, and each growth cycle and stage in your life so that you're on the same page with me, lock and step, as I show you and teach you and encourage you how to live life wired differently. But lives need more than one glossary. So when you're communicating with your wife, your spouse, your husband, man, get some words that help you communicate, right? When you're communicating with your business partner, get some words, get some understandings that help you communicate. You shouldn't be guessing, right? Have that conversation, have that glossary. Hey, another great time. I love it. I'm having a blast. And the reason I'm out here in the driveway is because this is where the glossary started for me. The first photo shoot. And I couldn't communicate with the photographer. Couldn't communicate. And I'm writing the book. I'm doing these books. I'm like, man, Wired Differently's got to have a glossary. You got to understand why I built this fountain here before I even built the house, right? I had to translate the feel and the thought of the house from a fountain. I wanted the fountain to represent the quality and the feeling of the house. That was my first transitional glossary. It was all done right here. Bottom line is, hey, man, what's your glossary? What are you going to do about creating your glossary so you can communicate better with others? It's only up to you. You're leading you. Hey, let's do this thing called Life Wired Differently, right? And look forward to my next book, Book 3, 2023. Your Will Be Done.